is, I don't really know. It's hard to say with big artists like that because they've already got the name. So they can just say, well, this is by Damien Hirst. And people will go, oh, and they'll kind of, same with Banksy, I think, where they kind of already have the name to back them up.
Yeah. Well, like, I think that's just a little bit of the art racket, and I think it's the part of the art racket people look over. Like, with the music industry, people have an understanding that the music industry is pretty greasy, and there's a lot of, like, stuff within that, and like how wheels get cranked. But then with art, like, my big frustration when we were in school together is, like, art gets talked about like it's this, like, holier than holy or, like, delicate thing, and we gotta nurture it and whatnot. But then, yeah, like, it's at the end of the day, you're selling. Like, if you're making a career as an artist, and, like, that's where you're getting your money from, you're in, like, the sneaker business. Like, you're selling a product. It's like the same reason why, like, Nike shoes cost more is because they have that brand recognition. It's the same reason, like, Banksy, like, people are tearing down walls and, like, selling his shit for millions of dollars, but then arguably, like, an emerging artist that's, similar skill set, it's, like, not. And, like, I was watching a documentary or about his residency he did in New York, and one of the pieces was that he did a bunch of art on canvases, and then they paid this old dude to sell graffiti style art
stuff for like $10 in the park.
And, like, somebody bought. I think they sold a total of 4, and, like, one person, like, bartered it down and got, like, a deal on it, and then, like, finds out later that that $30 they spent on these things is actually worth, like, 30,000.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, like, that to me is the weird part, because there's no there's no, like, actual value in art except for, like, the value that we associate it with it. Or
and it's my dad has a really good thing where it's only worth as much as what someone's going to pay for it.
Yeah.
So someone bartered it down to whatever it was, but that's how much they were going to pay for that. But then you see on the news that Banksy painted on that bridge wall or something, and someone spray painted over it, and it's the end of the world because they just lost a Banksy. But at the end of the day, Banksy is a graffiti artist, and graffiti, as I learned it in art school, is a low art form. So it's low art. So Banksy is kind of changing the game in the sense that he's made graffiti worth millions of dollars. And as you said, people will cut out sections of a house because it has a Banksy on it, or they'll put bulletproof glass over it or something to preserve it from whatever so everybody can look at it. But I find it such a weird thing that someone tags a rail car or tags something here in town and it's sandblasted off right away. And I kind of have my own thoughts on tagging versus murals and stuff, but that could be another podcast.
For sure. Well, I don't know. I guess for me, like, I really dig the idea of tagging, like, the culture behind it. I don't think it brings
doesn't add
too much, like, value.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what I like about street art is that, like, it's about as accessible as art can be, and I think, like, we have, because we've been doing these pop-up, like, art shows, right? And, like, that's been slick, and we're, like, talking to some artists, and there's this one artist that we were looking at doing stuff with, because, right, like, the work's good, and, like, we offer a lot of, like, freedom. It's like, send your stuff, but then, like, the selection that he sent over, it's like, well, like, we don't have the benefit of an art gallery, and we're sticking the stuff up
outside
in public. Yeah, and you're not controlling who's interacting with it, and then you also don't have any context. Yeah, so I think it's a little bit. Yeah, that's how I feel about tagging. It's not bringing value, but I really like the idea of somebody being like Jonathan, like, all over everything.
Yeah.
But what I think is also interesting, like, bringing it back to Banksy and street art, is that it seems like every single art form or genre or whatever kind of goes through this process where it's like low art,
Mm-hmm.
and then it suddenly becomes popular.
Mm-hmm.
Like jazz when it was starting out was, you know, this like low, like greasy thing and speak easies, and now you talk to somebody in jazz and you're like, I want to punch you in the throat and
Yeah.
steal your money. And then like a similar things happening with street art. Like originally, you know, this like low thing, and then it's suddenly in like galleries.
Yeah.
And...
Yeah, I find that interesting. Well, and it kind of goes back to, well, and maybe we're seeing kind of a little bit of a revolution art that way. Because thinking about how, like when we were talking about Van Gogh and how he was like nobody, but he was at the forefront of a new movement, and now is kind of like, you know, one of the forefathers or grandfathers of this this
mm-hmm.
impressionist thing. Maybe that's kind of what we're seeing with the graffiti, but I don't know if people would necessarily see that as the same thing, because I think, yeah, and this is kind of the weird two-sidedness of it, because if someone tagged your shop with Jonathan was here, you're like, well, what the hell? Like, and then you get it sandblasted off. But if Banksy tagged your shop with one of his pieces, then you're going to put the plexiglass over it and all this stuff. So it's, I don't know, it's a very interesting sort of...
Yeah, but it's like it's the value.
Yeah, and it's the value
thing.
put on it, right? When it's just it's the same stuff that goes into spray painting because he uses stencils and stuff, but it's a different execution of it.
I don't even know if it's like a different...
Well, execution in the sense that it's usually his stuff is clever and it's the stencil stuff,
mm-hmm.
and yeah, it's still spray paint, but it's not like someone freehanding a tag, you know?
Yeah, fair.
So just execution it in that sense, where it's still the same medium, but displayed in a different way.
But I think you gotta like also keep in mind that like graffiti and street art has been around
Forever.
Well, like for a good while, and it's only like the last, you know, like decade or whatever that it's become this high class.
For spray
thing.
painting, yeah, but graffiti has been around since like the dawn of time. You can
that's...
see like graffiti in like ancient Rome and
yeah.
chiseling away.
But like what you touched on with Van Gogh and like what we were talking about before we turned on the recorder and set up this the boxes is like Van Gogh, like the only pieces he sold was to his brother when he was alive, and when he was alive, like nobody got it, and then he dies, and then it's like years after that then it starts to like move the needle. And like I guess my concern is like I think if Van Gogh lived in the modern era or had our technology and like social media, like we wouldn't have Van Gogh. Like if Van Gogh like every day was waking up, logging into his Instagram, and being like, "Wow, I fucking suck."
Yeah.
Like how do you stick with it? And like I think like my big fear for I guess our generation of artists is that we're not going to leave behind any meaningful work, because what our metrics are is fucking skewed.
Yeah, because it's all about the instant dopamine rush of getting that like. Or, yeah. Well, and I think that, again, before we kind of turned on and talking about these pieces that were made in like the 70s, and they're still controversial and still relevant in what they were talking about. Yeah, maybe I'm just not plugged in enough to like what's happening in the art world, but I just haven't seen anything kind of cropping up like that. Because if somebody was doing like the piece that I was talking about, the vagina scroll, if somebody was doing that today, everybody would know about it, and it would be like, there's a naked woman in the art gallery pulling paper out of herself and reading this poem, right? And again, obviously it's already been done, but but if it were
says everything.
Well, yeah, but I mean, if it were to happen tomorrow, I don't. Yeah, it's hard to say, because, well, would they be doing that like genuinely, or would they be doing that to get the reaction of the news and the media and stuff like that? Or I think that maybe that kind of hits into what you're talking about is the genuine nature of making stuff. Like, are you actually making it for yourself as an artist to express some kind of inner question or as a reaction to something that's going on, or are you making it because you know it'll get that reaction and that'll kind of launch your name into it?
See, I don't know where I stand on that one. Like, where authenticity as an artist comes.
Yeah.
I don't. For me, I don't think you should be factoring in an audience while you're making, thinking about if they're gonna like this or not. I think that produces weak art.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, with my writing and that type of stuff, it very comes from a self-centered, I don't know, I might as well just be jerking off type of place, and I don't know if it's better to be addressing an issue, or I'm gonna do this because it's targeting that, and I also, I don't know, yeah, and I think it's just the artist's job to create, and then the audience is going to attach meaning to it if it's good or not. I was having, so I'm back on doing stuff on Instagram again, and I was chatting with my girlfriend, and then somebody had commented about it's cool. A while back you were doing these poetry verses, and they were lovely, and you should start doing that again. So last summer, for 2 months or whatever, I had this what I thought was it was a joke. Where I was producing it from was a joke. I was
Okay.
I'm gonna write Instagram poems.
Yeah.
Right. So, which involved sitting in my backyard with friends and being writing awful poetry, right? And
Yeah.
then and then I stuck it up on a yellow background with a little sunflower thing at the bottom, and it would be things I don't know, you were beautiful wrapped in the naked light, stuff like that. And then, but people were digging it and attaching value, and this person who made that comment, obviously some of them had an impact,
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want to be yo, that was a joke and you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, because I probably don't know what I'm talking about. So then we were having this heated debate around it, because I was yeah, maybe I should do that, and she's well, as long as it's coming from a place of authenticity. And I was well, I don't, it wasn't, and I don't know if I could do it and buy into it.
Yeah.
But then if I'm channeling something, even if it's coming from a place of play and joking around, but then somebody's I don't know.
Well, and I think that's one of the one thing that a lot of artists maybe forget or don't realize is that once you put it out into the world, you don't control it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So just even if you were making it from a joke, that their interpretation was serious, or they took something from that for whatever reason. And I think that goes with any piece of art, because we've all had our own individual upbringing, mm-hmm. and all that stuff, and we have all our own personal biases and everything like that. So while I might perceive that as a joke and think that was really funny or something like that, someone else might see that as completely serious and beautiful and whatever else that they did, right? And I think that's something, I agree that you shouldn't make for your audience, but I think letting go is another huge kind of step that a lot of artists take as well. So when they need to just let it be its own entity in the world once it's out there, right?
Well, and that was I think my biggest shift. I think where I am now, I'm producing what I consider to be good work a lot more frequent. But
mm-hmm.
I read Big Magic by a girl who has a name. She's the girl that did Eat, Pray, Love, and then Big Magic's this kind of reflection. No, it's a reflection on the creative process and writing and her approach to art, and I think there's a lot of good insights into it. But one of the big things she touches on is that is looking at the artist as like a vessel and kind of moving it towards back to how the ancient like Greeks used to look at it, is you would have the artist and then you would have the muse, which was, you know, like a goddess that would come along and be like, use red. And then,
Yeah.
so like the artist wasn't a genius, like the artist had a genius. And then for me, like that's been huge because then suddenly I'm not judging my art. Like it's more like someone's like, "Yo, this is shitty." I'm like, "Wow, I'm just taking the orders from the big guy," you know? Like, I'm just that humbled assembly line worker, man.
Well, but how does that make you feel that you're kind of removing yourself from responsibility there? Because if you can blame it on the deity or whatever and saying, well, it was their idea, not mine, how are you?
Great, actually. Like I think, like my quality of life has been way better. Cause
Just passing the blame.
yeah, just well, like passing the blame. But if you're passing the blame, then you're also not allowed to accept the praise. Be like, yeah, that one was me, but like that other
Yeah.
shitty poem, that was that guy. But what it does, like I think, because for the longest time, like I struggled with, like you put so much. I think as an artist, you can put so much of your self worth into your creative racket, and at the end of the day, like there's way more to life than art. And
I'm nodding hardcore. Yes.
yeah,
Yes. Yes.
and like, and it's just a job, and more often than not, like a shit job that doesn't pay you well. And if it was like any other like kind of job, you would quit forever ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, it just like takes that pressure off, and then it's like, so then I'm not worrying about trying to make it good. Like I'm just worrying about showing up to work regularly. And I think if you show up regularly and consistently, you keep swinging at it, like things are bound to happen. And I think like that's the big difference between like a professional artist and like an amateur. Like, man, I should start writing down like the quotes that like plug in, and I'd be like, and I can properly pronounce this person's name. Yeah, but this idea of like amateurs wait for inspiration and then professionals just show up and get to work. And yeah, like that's been huge. So yeah, like that idea of like viewing myself as just like a humble assembly line worker or like a line cook or some shit, like really works for me, because then it's just like, oh yeah, I'm just like connecting these pieces that are like floating around there in the zeitgeist, and I don't know.
Yeah, I've heard some, and I like to try this for myself sometime too, where they just have like an hour a day when they're sort of at peak production, whenever that is, and they'll just sit and write or sit and draw or sit and do whatever it is that they do, and then not worried about quality or quantity. They just kind of write for however long as they feel. And I think that sort of plays into what you were saying, is just at least keeping active and keeping those creative muscles toned and not resting on it.
Yeah.
Because it can be really hard to find inspiration once you get out of it. Or just waiting for that inspirational like lightning bolt moment, right?
Well, I have a thought. No, like I agree with that, and like sometimes I struggle with like I don't fancy myself a hippie, and I can get like my skin a little like crawly when you start talking about things in like an overly like hippie manner, like saying like the energy and the vibe and things like that. But or even like the concepts that this author who has a name touches on in Big Magic. Like there's a lot of moments where I was reading the book and be like, oh come on, whatever. Yeah, but I think it's true. Like I think if you're like have that structure and you're flexing that muscle, that the work comes to you easily when it knows that there's like an outlet. Like I'm really big into the Clash, and after that band broke up and like Joe Strummer was doing some stuff, and then for like a long time like the well had just dried up because he didn't have like a band that was good, like didn't have an outlet. And then suddenly somebody's like, yo, let's form a band, and they get the mescaleros, and then it's like the tap's back on, and he's like, oh my god.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and I think that, yeah, I think that's really important for sure. But if you don't like the hippy dippy stuff, how do you feel about opening yourself up to critique? Not to say that it gets hippie, but just with
No.
the, yeah, I'm kind of getting a whatever vibe from this, or if it were mine, that's one of my favorite lines in using in critique. If it were mine, I would have done this.
And you're like, shut
this,
the fuck up, it's not yours.
But I've said that to other people too, so I can't. Yeah, I've said that too. But it's sort of a, I guess that's a polite way, maybe, to say, well, if I had done this, I would have like exposed this in a different way or whatever, because photography is my sort of language. Mm-hmm. But I guess for me, I'm totally fine kind of cutting off from getting critique, because you don't want to hear the negative stuff a lot of the time. But I think for me, it's also really important to make something and see what other people think of it, not in the sense of I need affirmation and I want oh, this is really good, you should do more of this. I actually want like constructive criticism. Mm-hmm. So I think also that's an important part of being an artist is, and at least if you don't like hearing it from other people, being able to take it mm-hmm. properly and not just shutting everybody down. Because usually people are there to help you, not hinder you.
I don't know.
Or maybe I'm just too optimistic for that.
No, I think being able to take criticism and also like how to effectively give criticism mm-hmm. is a really good skill to develop. I think there's a time to give criticism.
If someone's looking for it, I probably wouldn't just offer it up unless I knew I would be fine with that person, right?
Yeah, and I also don't, I did digital media production, but I was never like hardcore into an art school with like that. But like, talking to my painter friends or like hearing some of your stories, and I don't know if I necessarily agree with that criticism, because it's like, I think when you're starting out and you're like a young baby artist, like playing with ideas, mm-hmm. like just the fact that you're going should be celebrated, and any kind of like not very good is like enough to like blow somebody like out, and they're like, well, I'll just be a banker. So I think like early on it needs a lot of encouragement. I think it's really useful to be able to receive it, and I try to get to that place. But it's also like I think a couple things. Like I think if somebody's just like, if you're just getting praise, like that's not beneficial. And then if somebody's just like, if it was mine, this is what I would do, is probably not beneficial. I think if you're like hearing the same type of criticism, then there's probably some truth there. Or if somebody's like, this part doesn't resonate with me, there's probably some truth there. Like I don't think you have to adjust it. But I don't know, like for me, it's like also tends to be like my relationship with the person who's critiquing me. Like if it's somebody I respect and we've built up trust, like Ryan, like we can be really like open and honest with each other. Mm-hmm. And then I have a friend, Andrea, who we used to like work on stuff forever with, and like when she gives me feedback, like I take that in. And then also my girlfriend, which is like the first time like ever where I've had a partner and they like give you feedback on your work and you're like, actually, yeah, you have a point. But like a lot of the times when there's not that trust and someone's like, have you thought about this? It's like, have you thought about shutting the fuck up? Like, who do you think you are?
Yeah.
I don't know if that answered the question.
No, I think, and I think I feel the same way. If it was just some random whoever who, for whatever reason, saw mm-hmm. my stuff and they're like, well, and I've had it before because I like my old buildings and stuff like that. But it's, and so you get that, and you're, I usually dismiss that too. Whereas if I'm going for feedback on something or just a second set of eyes, because I find that really helpful too. Yeah, it'll definitely be someone that I trust, that I know, that I think has good taste and knows me well enough to kind of get a picture of where I'm coming from. And if it's over Messenger or something like that, and I can say, well, I was going for this. What do you think of that kind of thing? Or does that work? And then they can kind of play it back and say, well, I would have done this. Because, like, for a recent example, so I made some stuff for a local radio station here in town for free because I'm trying to get my foot in the door a little bit. Don't advocate working for free, but just now and again. So I was making some stuff, and then I felt that something was off with it. But I couldn't place what it was. So I sent it to somebody that I really trust, saying, I'm trying to do this thing. They're like a web radio station. They're online. So I'm trying to find stuff that would work, like convey that through their, because they wanted like social media banners and stuff like that. And she came back and said, yeah, that's great, but there's no people in it. I was like, okay. She's like, well, usually when I'm listening to music or whatever, or the radio, I'm having a coffee or doing some stuff. And I was like, okay. And so I went back and looked through like stock images and stuff like that, and I found stuff that worked, that made sense. And beforehand, it wasn't, like, there was no, I guess, personal connection, because I was trying to find pictures of Edmonton and all this stuff, and it wasn't playing how I wanted it to play. But now what I've got, I showed her again, and I'm happier with it too, because it was that missing element, right? So I find that having those people as sort of bouncing and like to bounce ideas off of and stuff can be really important too. So it's not necessarily like collaboration, but it's just getting a second opinion in a sense.
Yeah, for sure. And I think through collaboration or like that, like bouncing off ideas, like I think more often than not, that's how you get good work. But if it's with somebody that you trust,
if you trust, yeah.
Like if it's just like whoever, then I think you'll end up.
Yeah, well, and I think it'd be a lot harder. Well, unless it's kind of 9 to 5 marketing team job, whatever. I think it's a lot harder to kind of foster that good work and maybe know the person like personally enough to kind of put in the pieces that they're missing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because it's like, so they have an idea, but there's something missing out of it. So you can come in and say, well, I think it needs this.
Yeah. And I also like what you touched on there about like prefacing it, like with the goal you have in mind. Like, I'm going for this.
Yeah.
Am I getting close?
Yeah.
Because then there's something to measure it against, and be like, no, you're not. Right? But if it's just like, this is my painting, it's like, well.
Yeah, and I think obviously it depends on what you're making, and that can go with sort of what you were saying about putting your stuff out there and like the joking poetry and saying, well, it was supposed to be a joke, but people read into it a lot more seriously than I intended. I think that I'm not really sure what my point that I'm trying to make, but it kind of.
I don't know. I don't like. I guess if somebody listens to this now and they're like, Jesus Christ, I got that poem tattooed on my chest.
But I think it's a lot of what art is what you take away from it too.
For sure, but like I guess how I feel about it is there's creative expression.
Yeah.
And then when that gets put on display and like an audience interacts with it, like that's where like art happens. Like I don't think you can have art without an audience.
No, I don't think so either, because it's sort of the tree falling in a woods and no one's around to hear it, doesn't make it a sound. So if no one's around to see it, is it like, what are you doing it for, kind of thing? And maybe that kind of brings us back full circle into the social media thing, because it's like, well, if you can't, for whatever reason, you can't put it in a gallery or whatever because you don't have the name or the means to, or
fucking gallery.
Well, but you know what I mean. Like, you don't have the whatever to put it in a gallery or something like that.
Yeah.
Then you can use social media to put your work out there and, I guess, gain an audience that way. But I mean,
I agree, and I think like that's maybe where social media is beneficial.
Yeah.
Tried to turn on a disco ball. It didn't work.
It didn't work. I don't think it's plugged in.
Fuck. Yeah, I think like that's where social media is beneficial. But like I think at the same time, it's like this focus on I need a following or an audience when you're getting started is like the wrong mentality. I think it should be like I want to build relationships and I'm here to grow a community. And a community and an audience is like way different. Like it's a two-way streak instead of like my issue with social media is like there's no social aspect in it anymore.
Yeah,
so there's a bunch of people like hopping on soapboxes and like yelling about how great they are.
Yeah.
And then I think the positive interactions I've had within social media is like using it as a social tool, like interacting with that medium like I would interact with people like at a party. Like, I'm not gonna like walk up to somebody and be like, buy my fucking t-shirts.
Yeah. Well, and that's one thing that I'm really actually trying to do is rather than just typing that or tapping that heart button, is to actually, like, if I like it, I really want to get into the habit of saying something, like writing a comment as well. Because I think, I guess for me personally, it's more of the, like the interaction and the social that you're saying, where it's like, cool, I got a heart, but I guess for me, I'd like to know maybe why I got a heart rather than just I like the look of this as I'm scrolling past, like, super fast. Yeah. You know? Yeah, so you just do the double tap and then you scroll on to the next thing and forget about what you just double tapped on.
Yeah, and I think we put so much weight on having those likes and that interaction, but then also, like, don't factor in, like, how we typically engage with social media. Mm-hmm. Like, what you get, I don't know, with like Instagram, like more often than not, like when you're on it, like you're pulled into like a dark vortex of like spiraling images.
Yeah, well,
it just goes on forever.
Yeah, with Instagram changing and it should be interesting to see how this changes things in social media, because with Instagram changing its algorithms, so it's sort of like we think you'll like this stuff first, and it's not chronological anymore. I think a lot of people who are into the social media game are going to be like Instagram has changed the rules. So now we're going to see people changing how they play it. And I think that, not to totally echo what you guys talked about before, but when you saw that banned by an ad, I think the algorithm and the non-chronological played into that, because they might not be getting seen anymore because of this algorithm thing. So they felt that, or this is me putting my assumptions on there, but they felt that buying this ad would have them be seen when they weren't.
But then it's like, for sure, you don't have control over like what Facebook Facebook, Instagram, it's all the same. How they're going to switch it up, and like I'll just touch on like my concern there is like this idea of the echo chamber, like we're just going to show you what you like because you've like indicated you like this. Like I think like on a larger global scale is like that's why you're seeing a lot of like this divide, this political divide, because it's like the left just gets wrapped up in the left like messaging, and then the right just gets like wrapped up in the right messaging, and it's like
there's nothing in between.
And you choose your media now. It's not like, you know, there's a respectable newspaper like the Edmonton Sun or whatever where it's like, you know, we have to like showcase both sides. So I think like that's a concern. But in terms of that band and how you're interacting with social media, like of course, like they make money off of your content and they make money off of people buying ads. So of course they're going to be like tweaking stuff. It's like Facebook, right? Like when Facebook really got into the ads, they tweaked it so that your organic reach went way down. So there was an incentive to buy the ads, and like Instagram's doing a similar thing. But like if you want to get seen, like then I think it's like focusing on developing a community and like actually using that to make relationships. And I think if you're not doing that, it's either you're lazy or you have some self-doubt and you're like don't want to be rejected about being like, hey, you want to like hang out sometime? Yeah,
but the rejection is such a huge part of creating stuff though. And I think navigating through life is you're going to be rejected more times than you're going to be accepted.
All the time. But well, okay. So last week, the week before, I'm trying to get a day job.
Yeah.
And like going on for job
Interviews?
interviews, it's like first
It's
dates.
the worst thing
A little bit.
ever. I hate looking for jobs. I'll just put
Right.
that straight. I hate it. I hate it.
Yeah, it's not fun.
No,
I think
it's
I gotta
not
switch
fun.
up the approach. Anyways, the fact I'm looking for a job doesn't really matter. What matters is I'm in this job interview with these two dudes who have like a digital media marketing firm, and they have, like they were the epitome of the type of dudes that give white heterosexuals like a bad reputation, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like in this interview and doing whatever, and then I leave like feeling greasy for countless reasons on like this interview, and like the things that were being brought up and talked about is like, man, this is like why do I didn't play on a sports team? But like, and then like what got to me after I like called my mom and debriefed about like not wanting to sell my soul to the devil and like having a cold shower. What got to me is like they're getting business and making money, and like maybe the work's good, but like the reason they're doing that is like they don't have that self confidence issue. Like they don't have a fear of rejection, right? It's like that greasy dude at the bar that doesn't have an issue like going up to a girl and be like, sup.
Yeah.
You
Give
know?
me your number.
Yeah, give me your number, girl.
Yeah.
And then maybe that like nice dude who, not nice, but like I don't know, like a good human who like maybe just feels like a little bit like, oh, I don't want to like bug her because I don't want to come off as greasy. Like it's a little bit of that, and yeah, if you can't get over that, like if you're lazy, just like fuck off. But if it's like a self confidence thing, like get over it, because if you're producing good work and the only reason that good work isn't getting to people where it could actually be bringing benefit is because you have a fear of rejection, like figure it out. And like
Yeah.
me and Ryan struggle with that, and I think like that's a huge reason that's kind of holding us back from where we could be.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that maybe ties into my self-design concept thing.
Yes.
As I was saying, like, I don't think the self-design is the best term for it, and I don't know what I would call it otherwise, but this is just the term that I know of. So basically, as I said in the letter, the main concept of it is if you do what you love, you'll be naturally good at it because you're good at it because it's what you love to do. So it won't seem like work and all this stuff. And if you just do what you love and keep doing that, then people will come because they're seeing good work and that you're the passion behind it. So that's sort of the concept behind self-design. And I think one struggle with self-design is sort of falling into that niche. Well, I'm really good at it and I'm passionate about it, but it's the same thing. And so there's also the fear of failure, I think, is a big one too.
Yeah.
Where you don't want to step out of your safety net because you're afraid of failing or whatever, like money-wise or losing followers or whatever the hell people are concerned about now. But it's just, I find that such a weird thing because I've never fallen into that. So I find it hard to, I guess, understand that mentality of worrying about followers all the time. But I think if you guys keep doing what you're doing and it's like the best work that you make and all that stuff, I think this community that you want to foster will come because people will find it. And so, yeah, you might need like use social media as a tool to get your stuff out there. But I think, I don't know, I think for everybody it's doable. Like, and some people's passion is banking or whatever, and they can be the best banker in the land because I know people who are just inherently good businessmen.
Yeah.
They're good at it. And so that's what they do. But I think that goes for art as well, is they love it and they keep at it. So that's where the practice comes in to be good at it, right? Good quotes. But
So then, like, what do you think me and Ryan need to do specifically with the CHUMP project to continue to expand it or develop it? Well, like,
well, I think
yeah, it is the advice thing.
I'm
hitting you up for the consulting.
I like what you guys did with the pay what you can. And my small global knowledge of music, like I remember when Radiohead did that, And yeah, I know it's Radiohead, so they have a big following, blah blah. But they still, because I think that was for In Rainbows, when they left their label, and they did a pay what you can kind of thing, so you could get it for free, or you could pay $1,000 for it. And I think they made a crap load of money, and I think kind of the same thing where if you leave it up for the people to choose, yeah, you'll get the people who will pay nothing or a penny or whatever.
Which is fine.
Which is fine, but I think more often than not, you'll at least find people, like with a CD, because it was still on CD, I guess, at that time. So old. That they'll pay whatever a retail CD was, or they'll pay a little bit more because they love Radiohead, or and that could translate for you guys too, is they really like your brand, whatever you want to call this thing, so they'll pay more for it. Or in some examples like me, I was able to pay the full thing. And I, as I guess a contributor, I liked the option that I could, even if I was broke, I could still give you guys $5 and not feel greasy for cheating you guys or something like that, or saying I really want to help you guys out, but I can't because I have no money, right? So I think that is a good model. As for what you guys can do.
Yeah, what are we not doing good?
I don't know, it's tough to say because what you guys mail out I think is really good. The little magazine the zine is sleek. And the little, you've upgraded your envelope to have a drawing on it, which was a nice little surprise in the mailbox.
Fucking Ryan, that kid's good.
I think I don't know, it's hard to say because you guys are still, you've done this a few times before. And
Shit, yeah.
Yeah, and so I think taking that experience from the ones that didn't go well and putting it into this one is obviously good to do. Because it would be stupid to make the same mistakes over when you've already kind of been burned a few times.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know. I think mine and Ryan's thing is consistency.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily work in a format where it's you're applying constant pressure. It's a lot of sprint and go, and then you get momentum, and then whatnot. I think a little bit of that self-confidence thing, because I think the work is good. Reaching out to brands or something for sponsorship and doing that and presenting it.
Yeah, I think, guess, just from what you guys were talking about, and I guess sort of the feel of the zine and kind of knowing where you're coming. I don't think I've ever met Ryan, but coming from sort of your punk background, I'd be careful with what brands you associate with, and I'm sure you're already thinking about that. But I think kind of going into the selling out thing.
Yeah, but what does that even mean?
I think, to me, selling out is when you compromise your vision for money.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it.
And I don't think you guys would do that, but I think, people are stupid, but I think some people might see it as selling out, and I don't think you guys should care about that.
Yeah. Because
I think, as I said, everybody needs to eat and everybody has bills to pay. So I don't see why you couldn't do some kind of sponsorship, with a print house or something like that.
But a couple thoughts on that. So I think CHUMP kind of falls in. It's really just getting going, but it kind of falls in this weird area where it's a little bit like a magazine, so it's open for sponsorship or advertisement, and you can explore with that. But then it's also kind of this nonprofit arts project where we're supporting artists and doing things in that. But quick little story. So Johnny Rotten, lead singer of the Sex Pistols, after the Sex Pistols broke up, he formed this band called Pill.
Okay.
Public Image Limited, and then back in the late 2000s, Johnny Rotten did this butter commercial. So it was on British TV. It's I'm Johnny Rotten and this is my favorite butter. And he was on
That's
this Buddy
amazing.
commercial. Yeah, and I like saw this commercial. I was like, fuck, like the leader of the punk rock is selling butter. Like, I'm saving off my mohawk and like I'm getting a job. This is bullshit. But then what comes out is that Johnny Rotten wanted to put his band in the studio, but like no labels were going to sign him. So there was this offer to do this commercial and make money, and he took that money to go record his band. So, like, is that selling out? Like, I don't know. And I
Well,
think for me, like, I struggle. Like, if Nike called me up or like Enridge or something, and they were
well,
like, "Yo, what you're doing with Chump really fits this like messaging we're trying to put out. Here's a buttload of cash," and like suddenly you don't have to work a shitty day job. Suddenly, like, you're able to do like bigger works, like, you know, like bring artists down and like
yeah.
do stuff like that. Like, I would.
Well, and I don't see that. I don't see that as selling out. I would see it as selling out if Nike went, "This is amazing. We're going to buy you out, and it's still going to be under the Chump name, and you guys can be CEOs or whatever, but we're going to have our little team do that for you.
We need sneakers on the cover."
Yeah. Or you have to say Nike 10 times throughout the magazine, you know, or something like that. Whereas I think that would be selling out. And like Instagram obviously sold out because they were bought for $1 billion, and now they've gone downhill in my eyes. I still use it, and I guess I'm a hypocrite, but c'est la vie. But I think, I mean, and as you reacted to Johnny Rotten doing the butter commercial, it's a hard thing because he did it for the cash so he could make music, but that butter company didn't compromise his music, right? He did it for the cash, and I guess it's case by case. Like, if you can do that and be fine morally, then all the power to you. But if you're gonna do that butter ad and feel greasy for doing it, then that might be a moral thing.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I guess it's just like
I have no issue if you guys go, well, not corporate, but like if you get branding or like if you get sponsors, I think that's fine because that'll help you up your distribution and give you guys some like a paycheck
and bigger work.
Yeah, and I think that's important for sure. And I think, well, speaking to this, like the radio thing that I didn't do it for anything, but I'm kind of hoping that when they're looking for somebody, they'll email me.
Yeah.
And say, "Hey, we're looking for somebody to do a poster. What's your fee? Can you do it?" And I'll be like, "Yep, cool, right on."
But I don't. Yeah, no, like true, and I think there's like something to be said about doing work like that. I guess like for me is like, I don't know, like I would personally not have an. Well, I'm just gonna say this. This might change next week as I grow and mature as a human. Like, I would personally not have an issue, like working with brands or like selling out personally or like structuring Chump in such a way where it can like find that balance. If that means like I can have weight to back it up, right? Like, so like if I made Instagram and I sold it for $1 billion, you know, and then suddenly like I'm working for somebody. Like, I'm not somebody that wants like a fancy truck, but if I had $1 billion, like there's a lot of good I could bring into the world. Like, even if I got that $1 billion from an oil company, or something, right? You know, so yeah, I struggle with that.
Well, and I think it's like you guys aren't an environmental magazine, but I think we're an environmental magazine, but we got a bunch of money from oil, you know, and there's that kind of mix. Whereas I think if you're a company and you work with brands and people that follow your mission and vision that we did in school, you know, and they but they kind of represent similar things that you guys do, I think that's a good working relationship.
Yeah, I think so too. I also think like that is going to be like the marketing of the future. Like, I think you'll, and it's a little bit of marketing of the past. Like, I think you'll get to the point where it's like these art projects or shows or whatever create a following, and then like brands are like, we're going to support them. So then it's like Game of Thrones brought to you by Campbell Soup.
Yeah.
the soup in you, you know, like that, like how radio dramas used to be handled like back in the day.
Yeah.
And yeah, like, and ideally, well, it's like that on the authenticity thing, right? And like if we're working on building trust with our audience, and then suddenly you're trying to sell them a shit product, like that's not beneficial for you in the long term. It's not beneficial for like the brand you're working to, and like I don't know. It's like what the fuck? There was this show on CBC that was really good, like Being Erica.
Okay.
And it was whatever. It was a good show, and it was like buzzing up. And then they did a product placement with this car, but it was like obviously like it wasn't well done, and it was like the whole intro of this episode was like they were driving in this new car they bought, and then the car was like never referenced again, and like that choice just killed the show because it wasn't
well
authentic.
Done. Yeah, or authentic, yeah, because it's obviously well, and you see that with music videos though, where it's like the first 5 seconds are someone talking on some phone, and it's all like the logo of the phone, and you're like, okay, well, I'm not here for a phone ad. I'm here to watch this music video.
True, but even like that, because it's like who's paying for music videos now? Like MTV's not airing music videos. Like,
well, it's either the label or it's the phone company that's giving you a whole bunch of money, but you have to show probably X number of seconds of the phone, right?
Yeah, we're gonna have to do a part 2. Yeah, we've been at this a while. Do you want to close it with anything?
No.
Yeah, we'll just like start the fade out here.
I don't know what more to say. Well, I guess it depends. Okay, and cycling back real quick.
Yeah.
I think I think you have to look at maybe what you're not currently doing with CHUMP, and maybe look at to see what other, like what I would do, because I'm not in this field I don't know it very well, but I would look at what other zine makers are doing, and see what they're doing and what's successful, and reach out to them, because I found more often than not that the art community is pretty solid when you email somebody saying, hi, I really like your work. I'm trying to do the same thing. Can you offer me any advice, kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm also really blown away with that, especially in like our town of Edmonton. It really seems like if you have a good idea and you're willing to work hard, people like support that.
Yeah.
To go above and beyond. And
I don't think I've run into any issues where people will say, well, no, I don't want to help you because you're competition, or or no, you're just gonna your competition, or they're industry secrets, so I'm not gonna share them with you. And I mean, if they do that, then you just move on and find somebody else who will.
Yeah, like I think that might be true in like other industries, but I think especially with art, like a lot of times when I talk to big to-dos, they have this attitude of they have no idea how they got to the position that they are, and they feel really lucky and want to pay that
it back.
Forward.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is a thought that almost left me.
Okay.
So going on that and bringing it back to something else really quick, I think then it's a matter of really focusing on building and engaging in a community.
Yeah, I think engagement is huge.
Yeah,
and I think it goes beyond the social media, because you can only engage to a certain point. But I think these street galleries that you're doing is really cool. And I don't know, you guys, like, the music scene a bit, so I don't see why you couldn't hustle that a little bit, or I don't know how that would play into what you do, like, with the zine, but
it would fit. Like, I think, no, like, I think, like, that's something I'm saying, but, like, also at the same time, something me and Ryan need to be doing a way better job at, especially since we have built, like, a little bit of a platform with CHUMP, and, like, like, I haven't been good lately at going to, like, local events and, like, supporting that, and I really think, like, engaging in the community, like, online and bringing value, and then also, like, in your local community, like, maybe just showing up.
Just showing up, I think, is a big deal, because it'll go 2 ways, usually. And because it's sort of like, well, I could put on a show and you don't come. If you don't come, I'd be kind of upset about that. But it's also like,
if I don't
well,
come to your show, I'm probably dead.
but I'm just saying, like, if you know someone who puts on a show, showing up means the world, right? And then it's sort of like, not that they owe you one, but they kind of do, in a sense that if you put on a show, then it'd be nice of them to show up back, you know, and kind of pay it forward in that sense.
I don't think it's necessarily that they owe you one, but I think it's really important to, like, I think it's just like treating these things, or like networking, like you treat being a good human and building relationships. Like, I really, like, it's like with school, for example, right? And then we have this Facebook group, and it's like
that nobody uses anymore.
Yeah, nobody uses, unless it's like, yo, I'm having a show, come out, yo, you know, I'm launching this project.
I still find it funny because you can do that, and it's I've been working on this, you should come out, and it's like, cool. But when you pose that question in the group, and it's like seen by 25 or whatever, and like I'm the only one that replies, I feel bad because I think your questions are really good, and I wish that they would engage more.
Yeah,
because
but
I think it's
like anything.
Well, whatever. I just wish that, I guess, for more engagement, and I'm really bad at being a hermit, and I'm trying to stop that habit, but I think engaging and showing up, and if someone asks you a really interesting question, you should, or like poses an interesting question, you should comment and start a dialogue.
Yeah, well, being a part of the community, and like the people that I know that are like killing it right now are like the people that's what they do. Like the work's good. I don't think it's like necessarily always the best work, but they're that person that's like at everything.
Yeah.
Like, you go to anything and they're like, hey, what's up?
Yeah.
Like, Jesus.
Yeah.
You don't have Netflix? Like, what's going on here?
Yeah, and I think showing up is a big deal.
Fuck, I think we resolved all of the challenges in the world.
Okay.
Somebody's gonna listen to this and they'll be like, fuck.
Yeah.
This is better than a Gary Vee podcast.